Introduce our guest speaker, Jim Kerns. Jim is the former deputy police chief of the Boise Police Department. He oversaw all operations, patrol, investigations, narcotics, gangs, and community policing. So he's got a few notches in his belt. He's an adjunct professor in criminal justice at Boise State University, master's degree in criminal justice, and a graduate of the FBI National Academy. So he's going to tell us how to manage our stress, which everybody in every industry, every walk of life has, and also a little bit about burnout and how to manage that or avoid it, and a little bit about emotional intelligence. Jim?
All right. So to finish my story, because it's all, to me, this is always a fun story, because as I sat in my first lecture in marketing, and I listened to the professor, and I can't still remember his first name is Larry. Don't remember what his last name is. Now, why I would remember his first name is not his last is totally beyond me as a college freshman. However, story remains the same. The story is he started talking about how this great man took a round hamburger and they made it square. And then he marketed it and he called it Wendy's. And he's a multimillionaire. And I go, I could care less about any of that shit. No, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to sell ice to Alaskans. No, I didn't want to do any of that. So I said, Mom, I'm sorry, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to pursue my dream. So I got my degree in criminal justice in 1982 and May of 82. And in August of 82, I started with the Boise Police Department. I worked through the Boise Police Department until I retired in July of 2011, just shy of 30 years of service. But I was lucky because I had 3 years in the Marshals Department doing bailiffing in the court. And what that did for me as a bailiff is I got to see all these really bad guys come into trial. So I got to learn a lot about who the bad guys were. So that helped me when I became a police officer, knowing what to look for and how to manage my own ideas about how I was going to do my job. Now, little did I realize that when I started policing that I thought I knew everything, and I found out I knew absolutely nothing. And so I had to learn the job of a policeman. I was smart enough in the school in classes, but I had to learn the job of being a police officer. And so those are the kinds of things that I learned through this, through the things that I'm going to talk about today. My 29-year career, Pat already kind of went over it, but I just wanted to tell you, I lived in the north end of Boise. I live in the southeast end of Boise now. I married my high school sweetheart. We bought the house that she lived in, and we raised our 3 kids there. I have 6 grandkids that are all within 5 miles of me, and I can't be happier. So this is why I do what I do, is because I love my community. I love the things that make our community what it is, and I'm part of that. So I want to make sure that you understand that that's I'm part of that, and I'm here for the long haul. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about. I'm going to start actually with, this is kind of going backwards, but it's different from my college presentation. Most of my college students know a little bit about emotional intelligence, so I don't talk a ton about it, but I talk about stress and burnout. I'm not going to bore you with a lot of the details. I will go over these slides, but these slides are really designed for my college level class, but it's also really important to know the basic foundations of emotional intelligence before we talk about stress management, because unless you know yourself, it's pretty hard to manage your stress and pretty hard to manage the burnout. So that's why I want to talk a little bit about that emotional intelligence about yourself. So what is emotional intelligence? It's really 5 things. Self-awareness. Are you aware of how you feel? What do you feel? What are the surroundings around you? Knowing who you are and how you're going to react is really important to understand what your triggers are. If you understand what triggers you, then you know how you can manage to either stop it and don't allow yourself to be dragged into something that will get you in trouble, or do you allow yourself to get into trouble knowing full well that you are in for the fight? There's sometimes when that might be the way that you have to do it. So, but you don't know who you are first before you can know how you're going to react. So then the self-regulations, that's that idea of controlling your emotions. Once you know what your emotions are, now I control them. I will tell you, the best thing that you can do is recognize when to control your emotions. Because the setting that you're in will determine whether or not you control your emotions with the utmost dignity, or whether you allow yourself the opportunity to stand out. I'm going to give you just a brief example. I am on the board of directors for the Boise State Alumni Association. We're in the process of doing some changing around of our organization. We're changing roles and responsibilities. I've been on the board for 13 years, longest standing board member. At the board meeting, one of our newer secondary managers, I'll call them, they were talking about the changes that were going to be made and who had roles and responsibilities. And my question to him was, has anything changed in the roles and responsibilities for our executive director? His answer was no. Everything's going to be the same. Then 15 minutes later in the meeting, he got up and he was explaining that there was now a promotion that was going to be made. Now, I'm not going to go through all the everything, but I asked him a lot of questions. Why that promotion? Why that person? Why didn't you consider other people? Were there, did the executive director help make that decision? And what his answer is when it all came down to it, I said, okay, tell me who the hell made the decision. He said, I did. I said, you're not telling me the truth. And my emotion, I knew what I was doing. I actually dropped the mic on the table and walked away. Because the son of a bitch lied to me. Okay. I don't like people to lie to me. If you tell me the truth, I can handle the truth. I may not like it, but I can handle the truth. So I knew full well that my emotions were going to be fully charged. So I took that risk. I could have just been very benign and just listened to it and said, okay, thank you very much. But that was not what I needed to do at that time. So that's that idea of self-regulation. Motivation. How do you deal with things in the face of discouragement? Okay, do you get really upset? Do you get red-faced? Do you get mad? Do you get angry? Do you stomp off? What do? Okay, you need to think about how you're going to handle that in the face of discouragement, because what motivates you to change, to manage your emotions could be what is the bottom, what's the end goal. Okay, if I blow up down here, will this affect my end goal? All right, so you're gonna need to know about that. And so that's that motivation, the empathy, the reading and identifying emotions of others. And you guys should be pretty good at that. If you're not, I would strongly encourage you to do some reading on how to look at someone and read their body language, read their facial features, read their emotions, so that you get to see, you read more into them, because about 90% of communication is nonverbal. The other 10% is lies. No, I'm just kidding. The other 10% is what they want you to hear. All right. So you have that ability to balance what your emotions are and what the body language and what they're saying and all that kind of stuff. So, and then social skills, the idea of getting along with others. Getting along with others is really important. When I was a rookie police officer, we used to work at the airport as special police officers at that time. So we didn't have full police duties, but we were on the airport and we did the university campus patrol. Okay, so those were our special police duties, and we would get police officers that would come in from other agencies, and I always thought of myself as a pretty good communicator. When I was young, I'm 22 years old when I became a police officer. And I'm in the airport, and I'm about 6 months into being a police officer at the airport when we get a guy that comes in from Riverside, California. Police officer for about 6 or 7, 8 years. He came in and I met him, introduced myself, and I said, hey, if there's anything I can do to help you get through, I'm here to help you. I'm do whatever you want. He says, I don't care who the fuck you are. Do you have any idea what I've done? You don't have any idea what I've done or who I am. And I don't really care who the fuck you are either. And to this day, the guy still hates me. And by the way, I supervised him throughout my career in the Boise Police Department. He stayed as a police officer and worked his way up through being a police officer and retired. I worked my way up through the police department in other ways. And as a supervisor of him, it was a very interesting challenge. So, but he didn't communicate very well. He didn't really get along with each other or with many other people. If he didn't like you, he didn't like you. And I don't know whether or not he was emotionally intelligent and made that decision, or whether he was just a dumbass. Okay, don't really know. All right, but bottom line, maybe a little bit of both. All right, so that's those emotional intelligence, what they are. There's skills. Okay. Oh, okay, we're still all right. Identifying emotions, using emotions, understanding and managing. Talk just a little bit about each one of those here. Identifying emotions. I see these videos that I always have my students guess what these facial expressions are about, but the reality is they're all a little different. They all can mean different things. That guy could be really happy as shit, or he could have just farted. I mean, we don't know, because all we know is what the facial expression is. We don't know what the overall circumstances surrounding where he is, what he's doing, what puts that together. And so that's what I think is really important for you to look at is body language, facial expressions, the surroundings, what's the environment that you're in as you look at what you're identifying as emotions. Then how to use that emotion. How do we feel influences what we think. Okay, if I can't get past the feeling, and I'm just gonna lay it out on the line. I'm a Democrat. Most police officers are not a Democrat. Most people I know are not a Democrat, and I'm okay with that. Don't hate me. I don't hate you. Okay, but I want to talk about this whole thing of emotions because we had a huge election that just happened, and there's a lot of emotions that come from that. All right, and my wife is very, very emotional. And when Kamala Harris was defeated by Donald Trump, I thought she was going to cry. I thought she was going to be sick. In fact, she told me, I think I'm just going to be sick. Okay. And so her emotions are so raw and so full that it influences how she thought. She says, we're going to go to war. Our country's going to be destroyed. I can't believe that son of a bitch got in there. I mean, all those things. And I go, honey, so you know what? We can't control what we can't control. All right. So it's time to gather your emotions and say, we have the ability to control one, us. And how we react to that is how safe we will feel. We're going to talk about that in the emotional survival, or the stress and compassion burnout. Okay, so you also want to try in your line of work, you want to match your emotion to your task. There's the idea of good cop, bad cop. You guys all kind of know what that is, right? So you can always be the good cop. It's totally fine. You can always be the bad cop. Totally fine. Sometimes you got to be both. It depends on what your role is. It depends on what you're trying to investigate, what things that you're trying to accomplish. But match the emotions that you feel to the task that you are achieving. If I'm going out and I'm going to go hunt and stalk a deer, I'm not going to be rampaging. I mean, I'm not going to be clomping through that forest, making lots of noise, going, I need to get to that tree stand before anybody else, so I'm running. And in the meantime, I've forgotten what else is going on around me. All right. So match that emotion to the task. All right. The third thing is understanding your own emotions. What are our own emotions? What do we feel, and what do our emotions mean to us? Okay. You all have that idea of when you get butterflies in your stomach. Butterflies in your stomach can mean really a lot of things. I'm excited. I still love Christmas. And I got 6 grandkids, right? And so out of those 6 grandkids, I think 4 of them still believe in Santa Claus, which is super cool. And we get to spend Christmas Eve, we kind of rotate around with the kids. And this time I get to spend the night with my little ones. So I got the littles, and they're 8 and 5. And I'm telling you what, I got them the butterflies just thinking about the excitement that they're going to have, and the idea that I'm not getting no sleep that night. Okay,
That's right.
I just know that that's going to happen, and I'm okay with that. But if I don't understand what my emotions mean and what my gut is telling me, then I could be really pissed off because I didn't get enough sleep, or I could be so happy because I got to experience all those emotions that those little kids have. All right, and so that's what it means by understanding your own emotions. And then managing them. Of course, once you understand it, you identify it. Now, how are we going to manage that emotions? How are we going to pull ourselves in and don't let someone bring us into the fold? Don't let anybody that knows what our triggers are. Don't let them trigger us so that we then react and then they win. Okay. How many times has that ever happened to you where you go, oh, this guy really pissed me off, so I'm gonna really piss him off. And the bottom line is you attack this guy verbally or whatever, and he wins the battle. Okay, because you are supposed to be the bigger person, especially if you're the boss. Okay, especially if you're the boss. If you yell or get into someone's face as an employee, and then that employee files a complaint against you for a hostile work environment, and you have to literally tell the truth that you were pissed off and that you held it against them. So you knowing what is important and helping to manage those emotions, that's why emotional intelligence is so important. All right, let's see. I want to talk just a minute about emotional intelligence versus your intelligence quotient. The IQ is measured by scientific experiments. I mean, there's very strongly scientific. You can repeat it because you have data that shows that if you get this this equation, this is the answer. That's how IQ is measured, and it is all about logical reasoning, linguistic skills, those kinds of things. EI, emotional intelligence, is not quite as easily measured because it's all about decisions. It's all about decisions that you make. When you are faced with a decision, and this is the way they measure emotional intelligence, they give you a scenario, and then they say, which one would you choose? And it's based upon that, which one that they choose, that the social scientists like me, we have made a decision on. This is really good, this is okay, this is all right, middle of the road, but this one, you shouldn't have probably picked this one because you probably don't have very strong emotional intelligence. And it's based upon the things we know about emotional intelligence. So it's not as easily repeatable, but we recognize thoughts and feelings and self. And really, here's the lesson from it. A good balance of emotional intelligence and your IQ can go a long way. One of the things that I play for my students sometimes, I play a clip of you guys watch The Big Bang Theory?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so The Big Bang Theory, you know all the characters. So Sheldon is extremely high IQ. I mean, he's literally, you know, more than a rocket scientist. In fact, he would say the rocket scientist is nothing because does dark matter. All right, so super smart. All right, but if you ask him any kind of question about feelings of others, he has no clue. And so he does not understand the social dynamics of anything. And so one of the scenes was Howard was helping him along, and he would show, no, let's see, no, it wasn't Howard. It was his girlfriend, who turns out to be his wife, Amy. So they're having Amy look at a picture, and the picture is of her little kitties, and Sheldon's looking at her, and she's smiling and saying, "Oh, like that." And Sheldon says, "Well, I have no idea. What are you so happy?" "Well, yeah, you know." She says, "Well, I'm looking at the kitties." "Oh, I understand now." And then the next picture was something of grandma, and so she looked kind of sad. And Sheldon says, "Well, what are you feeling now?" She says, "Well, I'm feeling kind of sad because, you know, I'm looking at a picture of my grandma, and I feel sad that she's gone." "Oh, well, why do you feel sad she's gone? She's still your grandma." I mean, he just doesn't understand the social construct of things. So again, that whole idea of you can be really smart, but you can be really dumb. All right, so it's a balancing of that emotional intelligence and your IQ. So emotional intelligence, soft skills, here's the things that you can look at, and are you good at this? If you're not, here's some tools that kind of may help you. So do you get along with others? Can you pretty much talk to anybody? My wife was a classic, and she was a respiratory therapist, so she had to talk to strangers all day long, every day. You know, how you doing, where you from, what seems to be the issue. So you start to get along with others. So being able to talk to someone and being able to communicate with them and have some discussion, that's really important. That's a skill of emotional intelligence. Encouraging the development of others. Having them, you know, giving them the opportunity to get stronger, not telling them what they need to do, but offering them opportunities for them to gain insight into their own self-development. The ability to face criticism. This is the hard one. This is really a hard one, is people don't They struggle with facing criticism. Many people don't like to be told no. Many people don't like to be told you could do it better and here's how you could do it better. So my recommendation to you is at least understand, is that a strong point for you, or can you make it a strong point? Even if you do it perfect, there's always room for improvement. And so I just look at it and be able to accept the criticism as it's intended. And most criticism is meant to be positive, unless it's just someone that says, you're a dumbass and I don't care what you think. That's, you know what, and that's criticism in itself. You go, okay, that guy hasn't given me any constructive criticism, so do I really need to care about what he says or not? Okay, so knowing when to take that criticism is also important. And your ability to stay calm in a crisis. This is a big thing for police officers. This is what we teach our police officers a lot, is how to stay calm in a crisis. We do it through crisis rehearsal. We will teach people how to go through a scenario in their mind and say, if this were to happen at this time, at this place, what would I do? And so you drill into their mind what their reactions are going to be, what their actions are going to be, and that they have that ability to stay calm while they're doing it. And most people don't understand this, that if you were to take, there's an interesting phenomenon called siren sign. Okay, and I'll explain that to you. Police officers, when they get in a car and they turn on their lights and siren, okay, and they're driving fast and they're going to a call or they're chasing someone or whatever, the natural reaction to that, your body physically, is to get tunnel vision, so you don't see anything on the outside. Okay, so it's tunnel vision, and it's auditory blocking, so you don't hear as well, you don't see as well, and if you aren't really calm, you don't remember as well. Okay, because your mind is concentrating on one thing instead of allowing itself to know that I'm a little bit on autopilot on some things, and that I can make myself not go through this siren sign. All right, and so I practice, and this is what we used to do. It used to be a 7-Eleven store right at the corner of Broadway and Warm Springs. All right, and we would talk about this in briefing. If there was an armed robbery at that 7-Eleven, what would we do? Where would we go? Okay, someone has to go to the store. Someone has to go do the perimeter. So where's the most likely way that person is going to go? Are they going to go out Warm Springs and out of town? They're going to go up into the foothills and hide? Are they going to go down Broadway and try to get out to the freeway? What's their normal what's their normal course that we think these robbers might go? And then if they were to go that way, how do we then do a traffic stop or a felony stop on them? Or do we wait? I mean, and what happens if they left on foot and we catch them in the neighborhood that is just to the east? Would be east and north of that. And what would we do? How would we respond to that? So we talk about all that, and then we rehearse that in our minds so that when it actually happens, it becomes second nature for us to go there instead of feeling like, shit, what just happened? All right. And so that is really important. And that's that ability to stay calm in a crisis, that if you have that ability, you become a much stronger person in order to communicate and work with the environment that you're in and the people that you're around and the situation that as it presents itself. So I really think that the ability to stay calm is really important. So can I change my emotional intelligence? I'm just gonna, yes, you can. It's best, and the next three slides, I think I'll just go by, but this is important because if you are an older person with a really strong mind, then you're probably not going to want to change your emotional intelligence unless that helps you. And if it helps you, absolutely, you can change it. Okay, there is all kinds of ways to change it, but sometimes people are so set in their ways that they don't understand their own emotional intelligence. And again, pardon me, but this is just something that just comes to my mind. I found it very disturbing when Donald Trump decided he was going to take and beat on his mic and do this when he had mic problems. And I think, That's so immature. That is so much of someone who shouldn't, should know better. Okay, in that situation. And again, this is not a political statement. It's just it's a visualization that I see that I go, I really wish that he wouldn't have done that. Okay, because it didn't show to me that he was very strong in his emotional intelligence. So, but if you want to change it, you can. The best way to deal with it is we teach emotional intelligence when kids are young. And when they're in the junior high age group and into the high school age group, we teach them about emotional intelligence. I can tell you absolutely that that did not happen in the 70s. Dude. Okay. But it's becoming more and more prominent, I think now. I mean, I talk to my college students and they at least are familiar with emotional intelligence, the words and the basic concepts. So we're starting to see a little bit of that, but it's really important that if you want to change, you can change. But the first thing you have to do is recognize what your own feelings are. Okay. Once you've developed as an adult, we get really somewhat set in our ways. And when we had introduced emotional intelligence into our field training officer program, and I was the manager of the field training officer program at that time, and we had similar discussions about emotional intelligence, and a lot of these guys are going, that's, I'm good, I don't need to change. And those people, most of the time, they didn't change, and they either left the police department or they stayed as a police officer, which is no problem, except they were a cancer because they were always negative. They didn't care about anything. So it really did make it a huge difference. So we do believe that emotional intelligence is really strong. All right, so that's how to test it. So, and I'll send this to Matthew and he can get it out. I don't care. These are things that I have come up with over my years of experience, and I believe that sharing them is important. So now we understand a little bit about emotional intelligence. So we talked about knowing who we are and knowing a little bit about how we're going to react to things. And now I'm going to talk to you about compassion, fatigue, stress, and burnout. Sometimes those are things that we think we know, but the reality is I don't think we're as smart as we think we are until we understand our own bodies. So I want to first go off with the definitions. Compassion fatigue is a term that describes the physical and emotional trauma that a first responder will experience, or someone who sees this trauma of others, and they experience this whole idea of adapting the emotions of the people that they're dealing with. Okay, this is really big. Firefighters, because they respond with paramedics. So firefighters, paramedics have this a lot. Police officers have this a lot. Victim services people deal with this tremendously a lot, because what they're dealing with is every time that they come in contact with someone, that person is in a crisis. And as they're in a crisis, they have their own raw emotions and feelings. And oftentimes those raw emotions and feelings get spurted out. Okay. And the people that are dealing with the victims, they hear the stories and they hear them over and over and over again. And I will tell you this, sometimes stories are the same, the names change. Okay. You can probably boil down a lot of the stories about what we deal with in policing and victim services to probably 7 or 8 or 9 types of stories, and the stories just change the names just change in the stories. Okay, so but we deal with that trauma because we're dealing with the emotions of these people, because that's who we deal with all the time. So that's compassion fatigue. That's the definition of it. Compassion fatigue encompasses that emotional consequences of working with the traumatized people. And it's characterized, these are the things that when you start to see this, you know you're experiencing compassion fatigue, a state of tension and preoccupation. Okay, I don't want to go to work. I don't want to have to deal with another one of those people. I don't want to have to listen to another story. I don't want to be on call. Even though it's my week to be on call, I can't deal with them right now. My own emotions are too raw. So if you start to see those kinds of things, that's the start of compassion fatigue. You allow the experiences of your patients to affect the well-being outside of work. So you just can't let work go. You go to work and you experience all this trauma in people's lives, and you listen to the trauma. You don't allow yourself the idea to process it out. And so when you go home, you start to, that affects your family. And we're going to talk about how that affects your family. And that's a really big thing in those, anything that deals with victims, and any people that deal with victims. You're being attached at work, and it's a normal part of the first responder stress. Okay, so there's people that I worked with in policing that didn't want to go home. All they wanted to do was work, and they wanted to work because it was a place that they felt safe, because they didn't have to share any of their feelings or their emotions. They didn't have to try to get along with someone. They went and they solved a problem. They went on to the next problem. But when that happens, you know that you're experiencing some burnout and some compassion fatigue, because you can't allow yourself to live your own life, and that's really important. You experience these things: avoidance and numbing of reminders. So sorry, I probably done that. Thank you. So you're avoiding and numbing of we'll talk about a little bit about this, but the avoidance is I don't want to go to work. The numbing is you drink too much. You get yourself involved in controlled substances somehow, you know, and whether that be you can't sleep, so you go to the doctor and you get a sleeping medication, and that sleeping medication leads to a further sleeping medication. Before you know it, you know, you're taking stuff that only really sick people take, but you feel like you're so sick, so you just continue to numb yourself. Or you get involved in something like maybe gambling. Gambling then takes all the pain away, but then that causes another pain. So you just can't get out of that cycle of involvement. So it's really important that you understand the signs and symptoms. That's what we're talking about today. All right, so talk about a little bit about compassion fatigue. This is burnout. Burnout is all that whole idea of chronic stress. Now, there are two kinds of stress I want to talk about. There's eustress. That's not YOU stress. That's EUSTRESS. Eustress, which is really good stress, and then distress, which can be okay, but long-term distress causes lots of problems. Eustress is that idea that we talked about before. Well, you know, you got butterflies in your stomach. You're excited. It's the first game of the season. You're the biggest fan of the season of Boise State football, and you think that you can control the outcome. You can't, but you're really excited about it. Okay, and I had that a lot. I'm a 54 year season ticket holder this year. And so I've been watching football for a long time. And I used to think that I could control the outcome by how loud I yelled at my TV. I can't. So, but that eustress was always really exciting. You know, it's always that whole idea of it's good. I can hardly wait. I'm anticipating Christmas, whatever it might be. So that's eustress. That comes and goes. It usually is not chronic. Eustress isn't. Nobody is chronically happy. All right. But distress, on the other hand, can be really bad. Distress, again, that's that fight or flight. Yeah, you can get butterflies in your stomach. Okay, that's usually the drop of adrenaline. And then when the drop of adrenaline really happens, and you are in that fight or flight, what you experience is television again, auditory distraction, or auditory blockage. And if you haven't prepared yourself, it becomes really problematic. And the stress that comes with things going on and day to day to day to day, and you guys all deal with stress in your own lives, you all deal with stress in your personal or in your business life. If you allow that to control you and you don't do something to mitigate it, it will lead to this high distress, high stress problems, and you get to the idea of burnout. Burnout is that physical and emotional exhaustion. You just can't go on. I just don't think I can get up and go to work today. I'm so tired. You know what? I'm so tired of dealing with this same shit different day. I remember working downtown. I worked the bar district for a lot of years. Okay, and those lot of years included as a police officer, as a sergeant, as a lieutenant. That's about 12 years or 15 years out of my 29-year career that I worked down there. Guess what? The problems never changed. The people changed, the problems never changed. And you just go, what the hell am I doing beating my head against the wall? Okay, so that's that feeling of emotional exhaustion, and you get the cynicism and detachment. That cynicism of no matter what I do, it doesn't matter. And that idea that, there's no way that I can change anybody's behavior, so screw it. Now speaking of that, I don't even like the management. You know what? Those managers, those sons of bitches didn't know anything about what was going on. Little do they realize that we were police officers too. Okay, because when I retired, I was the deputy police chief. But I worked my way up through that whole organization. Well, people that came in after me only knew me as a lieutenant, a captain, or a deputy police chief. So they go, that guy has no credibility. I don't care. But you know what? I remember feeling the same way. One of my very best friends, Tim Rosenthal, I looked at him one time and go, who the hell do you think you are telling us what to do? Because he was a patrol division captain. And I only knew him as a patrol division captain. And I thought, son of a bitch doesn't have any idea what's going on out in the field. Well, he really did. And I learned that a little later when I became, in the interior workings of some of the decision making. He was asking questions that I wouldn't even have thought of. But in my youth and my exuberance, I was really cynical of him because I got, how does he know what we're doing? So that could be a part of burnout. Okay, now all these things aren't necessarily the pinnacle of burnout, but all of them combined, when you look at them, that's what you want to look at when you are talking about burnout. So feelings of ineffectiveness and lack of accomplishment, that goes that idea that no matter what I do, I can't change anything. Okay, so and this is something, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. This is easily overcome if you reframe things in your mind. Okay, reframing things like taking small victories, like looking at something and going, okay, I can attack something one bite at a time and I can get it accomplished. But if you allow yourself to look at things microscopically, you're probably not going to feel like you're doing anything that's good. You have to be able to look at the whole part of your work. My son just posted on Facebook. My son is an orthopedic PA. So he does knee surgeries. We did mine 8 months ago, 9 weeks ago. All right. So 2 brand new knees, doing really great. I think he's done some tremendous work. And he tells me every day, God, I hate my job. I hate working with those goddamn St. Luke's people. You know what? I can't believe those guys, and they don't understand what we're doing. And we got a new surgery center, and we didn't even want a new surgery center. And my God, the floors aren't level, and our machines don't work, and they're making us do surgeries and blah, 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 blah. And I'm listening, I'm going, let's see if we can reframe things. So today he posted on Facebook about 4 really positive things that happened to him during last week. And it's like, bingo, buddy, bingo. You know what? You've looked at it finally and you've said, oh, I can choose to look at all this negative stuff, but then, man, if I can choose to reframe it and look at the positive, that makes my day, and it can make you very happy. So the idea of, if you get caught in this whole idea of lack of accomplishment and you can't get your way out, like the guy that was such a recalcitrant prick to me. No, did I say that out loud? Yeah, I did. So, and they can't seem to break out of this whole idea of chronic stress and burnout. And then hypervigilance, we're going to talk a little bit about that from Kevin Gilmartin. He wrote an excellent book, and we're going to talk about that burnout. Oh, in fact, here it is. So Kevin Gilmartin was a police officer, then became a psychologist, then he wrote a book, and I think it's called The Emotional Tales of Law Enforcement. And if you're interested, get a hold of Matthew, and I'll get the title, because the title always evades me, because I know that it's a white book and it's got red writing on it. It's written by Kevin Gilmartin, and it's a great book. That's what I know about it. Okay. And so I've reread this book over and over and over. So here's how the hypervigilance works. Okay, our emotions run through this. They have a normal channel. We have normal ups and downs in our emotions, and that's pretty normal. Okay, that's what we call our homeostasis. Okay, that's pretty normal. All right, and then what we do, and in police work, and I would imagine that well, I do know that in some other jobs, and even in the work life, if you're not really careful about it, you get into this whole idea of, I'm in this normal mindset, and then I go to work, and when I go to work, work is really important. Work is really important that I stay acute, I stay active, I stay alive, I stay vigilant about what's going on. And so I am in this state of hyper vigilance for my work shift, 10 hours. Okay, this is when I go to work. As I'm getting into this, I'm getting into my police uniform, putting on my gun belt, I'm getting ready to go to briefing, getting my car ready. Okay, then I go out and I work this shift. Okay, the shift, and I have to be vigilant during the shift because I want to go home at the end of the shift. So I'm very strong about how I feel and about the emotions that I have and about what makes, in fact, my wife used to worry that I wouldn't come home. And I said, honey, I get it, but I'm really good at what I do. I'm really good at what I do, and I'm aware, and my people around me are very aware. So, but I still am in this really hyper vigilant state. Then I finish my job, and I check in my car, and I take off my uniform, and I drive home. And I should be able to stop right here in my normal homeostasis state, but I can't. I just can't unwind. I can't unwind it. So I go home and I sit down and I grab a beer and I sit in front of the television and I go, God damn it, there's not one thing to watch. You know, and you're just flipping through your channels, you drink some beer. You don't want to talk. You hope that your wife is at work and you know that the kids are already at school because you don't want to have to deal with them. Okay, you don't want to have to deal with anything that where you have to make a decision. You're tired, you're detached, isolated, apathetic. Okay, you follow through that, you go to bed, get up, and then you go to work, and you pass through your normal homeostasis, and you get back up in here, and you're hypervigilant again. And if you keep going in this state of mind where these are your work cycles, okay, and these are your home cycles, then you're bound and determined to burn out because you can't maintain this hypervigilance all the time, and you can't be depressed and detached. You have to be part of your family. You have to be part of your world. We had a police officer that I worked for 29 years. He worked for 32 or 33 years, I think. And majority of the time that I knew him in the 29 years that I was a police officer, he worked the graveyard shift with Sunday, Monday, Tuesday off. And he was the most well-grounded person that I know. And it's because he was very firm in his religion. He was very firm in his family values. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday allowed him time to go to church with his family. Monday and Tuesday allowed him to spend the time with his family. He had 6 or 7 kids. He was dedicated, driven, and focused on his family and his work. But when he was at work, he was at work. When he was at home, he was here in this normal range because he didn't allow himself to come down here. He was very good at what he did, because most people that work graveyards for 29 years, they can't do that because they have no idea what real life is all about. But this officer was amazing. He was not a real strong go-getter, but he was a real good producer. He was really good at working with people. So, and he loved the work that he did. So it was really important for him. And he got out of this hypervigilant roller coaster. But if you don't get out of this roller coaster, your body's going to start to burn out because you haven't been able to manage your stress. All right, so here's the symptoms. And another reason I'm going to give this to Matthew to distribute to you guys is they're the last 4 slides that I'm going to deal with. 4 or 5, I think maybe 5. I strongly encourage you to print them out and put them on your refrigerator. Put them on something that you look at every day. Maybe pick out 3 or 4 of them and do a little stick-it note and put it on your mirror when you are shaving or you're getting your makeup on or whatever. And look at those things, the things that are the most important, because this is the best example of a tool that I can give you. You know, a carpenter has a hammer and a ruler, and I'm also a woodworker. So I got, you know, a planer and a joiner and a chop saw and a table saw and all that. Those are the tools of my trade, right? These are the tools of your trade. specific things that you can do that will help you. So we're going to talk about them. I'm not going to go through all of them because I know we all have some places to go. And so we got about 20 minutes. So the symptoms, bottled up emotion. This is probably one of the bigger ones. A lot of times people, they won't give up their emotions. That's why emotional intelligence is so good to understand that if you are, if you recognize people's emotions, and especially people that you love, and you see them start to bottle up their emotions, and that's why I tell you, print this, because if your wife or your husband or your girlfriend, boyfriend, or whatever starts to see, you don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. How was your day? I don't care. I don't want to talk about it. No big deal. I don't want to talk about it. No, that's bottling up emotions, because there are things that go on every day. So bottling up your emotions, withdrawing from others, isolating, compulsive behavior. This is a big one: overspending, overeating, gambling, those things that you wouldn't normally do, but the way that you deal with stress. And it was stress eating. I weigh 200, I weigh actually 195 now. Yay. But I was 245 when I was a police officer. Okay, so I've lost a quarter of my weight. And the big deal is I didn't exercise as much. I ate because that was the way I kind of dealt with my stress. And so, and I can tell you almost every one of these things I've had experience in. So I kind of know it. I kind of lived this thing firsthand. So basically be aware of that. Changes in appetite, sleep, or other things, nightmares and flashbacks. I'm going to tell you a quick story here, because this kind of goes to the whole idea of stress and how to deal with stress. I was a police officer for 10 months. I was working at the airport. As an airport police officer, we weren't really allowed to go off the airport grounds to any kind of call unless it was an emergency and there was nobody else who was close. This call came out right about 6 o'clock. Well, at 6 o'clock was a shift change. Night shift was in at the police station. They were gassing up their cars, getting everything ready to go off shift. Day shift was just coming out of briefing, so they were still not in their cars and ready to go. So there's this 30-minute gap or window where there's not a lot of coverage that that's out on the street. Well, guess what happens? We get a shots fired, call, suicide, possible suicide. And it is literally down at the bottom of Vista Hill. That's where I live, by the way. Is right down at the bottom of Vista Hill in that area, in that neighborhood. Well, I bought the call, and everything that I talked about, siren side and tunnel vision, auditory blocking, the whole works. I turned on my lights and siren, and I just freaking floored it. And I'm going down Vista at about 135 miles an hour. And I go, I know I need to turn, and there's light, and I could see the light, and I knew exactly where it was going to be. And I go, oh man, I'm right there. And so what do? I hit the brakes. Well, when you hit the brakes on a car, the car does not go where you want it to go, because the tires lock up and it starts to slide straight. And so you turn your tires and it bites just a little bit, but it's really going straight. So you're kind of going like this. Okay, not really making the turn. And I had locked up the brakes, anti-lock brakes, by the way, but well, I think they were anti-lock. I don't know, that was a long time ago. Maybe not, but I can tell you that the tires locked totally up. And I could see myself going right on the corner. There was a business, and they had a concrete block that was controlled their irrigation. And I knew I was going right at it, and I just, the siren's going, I'm locked up, I'm trying to turn, everything's going. And at that time we didn't wear seatbelts, by the way, because it was too damn dangerous. Okay, a lot of things have changed. So I hit this concrete block and I go bounce up in the air. I hit the roof, my head off the roof of the police car. I bounce up in the air, come to the rest, and the siren's still going. Okay, and I'm dead stop in the middle of this a yard of this business. And I go, shake my head and go, okay, now I need to get going. And so I floored it again and peeled out and turned and went down the next street. And I got to the location because I knew exactly where it was. It was right around the block from my house. And when I get there, I'm greeted by two little girls in their nightgowns. And they're screaming at me, and mom just shot herself. Mom just shot herself. I said, okay, all right. Is there anybody else in the house? No. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go in. So I walk into the house, and the very first thing I see is bloody footprints on the hardwood floor that are running all around the hardwood floor in the living room and the kitchen. Okay, and the gunpowder smell is very strong in the house. and I walk back, and I follow the footsteps of the girls, and the back bedroom on the right, and in the back corner, like right over there, laid a body with no head on it, and a 700 Winchester mag on the ground right next to her. The aerosol blood is still in the air. I mean, and you can smell it, you can taste it. And then I come out and I have to deal with the little girls. And by that time we had the day shift that came on. They took over for me. Well, it ended up that I'd blown the rim on my tire. I had to call a tow truck. I had to get a ride back to the police station. Then I rode home, and I had to drive right by my house on my way home. And then I had to try to go to sleep. Okay, nobody should have to ever deal with that. Okay, that's not normal reaction for anybody, but we have to deal with it. And so was a strong distress, right? Strong distressive feature. And because I had to deal with that, I had to feel like, okay, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? I didn't sleep. I had nightmares and flashbacks. I went back to work the next night. Okay, the next night. And all I got from the guys at work was, fucking buckle up, Buttercup. You know what? This you chose to be a police officer. You know what? Get it on. Let's go. And now things have changed a lot, but in the early 80s, when I was a police officer, that's the way they believed. You know what? You just deal with it. We don't have time to hold your hand and coddle you. All right. And so that was really harmful. I mean, I had these nightmares, my appetite was down, sleep was down, changing other habits, and that I didn't want to play with my kids. I wanted to hold them, because I wanted to hold them and be true, but I didn't want to play with them because I didn't have energy. I didn't have the strength. I barely had the strength to go to work. Okay, and so if those symptoms would have stayed with me, it would have been very difficult, and I would have probably burned out really early, 8 months into my career. Fortunately, I had a really good wife, and she is the one that kept me from being a drunk in the gutter and changing all my behaviors. Because she kind of brought me back to life. But these are the things: I have difficulty concentrating, anxiety. I don't want to deal with anything. You know what? I feel isolated. I just feel like I don't want to have to deal with anything that goes on in life. So other symptoms: drastic mood swings, these up and downs. So you've got others as incompetent or ignorant. Okay, that's that whole idea of the management are stupid. They don't really understand what we're doing. Okay. You're less trusting of others, lack of productivity. You turn the perception of the world in terms of victims and perpetrators. They're not good people and bad people. You're either a victim, and if you choose to be a victim, you're always a victim, or you're always the bad guy. Okay, and there's nothing in between, and that's the way we choose to look at each other, and that's a part of the challenge that we had, where we were working, and sometimes we're only dealing with the top 3 to 5% of the people. Okay, and most of the time that's bad. It's the bad times that we have. We forget about the times when we have good positive reactions to our community. That's why being a school resource officer was a great part of me. I love that. So those are some of the other symptoms. Let's see. Inappropriate use of humor. This is, you guys would probably get a kick out of this from your work here, but we call it gallows humor in policing, where you made fun of everything and everybody that was bad, you know, and it was, sometimes that was the way of dealing with the stress. I mean, I responded to a motorcycle accident with another guy, and this guy hit a tree at 27th and Stewart. And when we got there, both of his legs were broken, and he was walking on his knees with his legs and ankles flopping like this, walking and going, "I can't feel my legs, I can't feel my legs." And it should have been traumatizing. And we laughed our freaking asses off, because you go, how can anybody do that? And were they that drunk, or were they that stoned, or were they, but the body does amazing things. And we should have been much better at the way and we did a good job handling it at the scene. It's afterwards that we're talking about it. And it's afterwards that we laugh about it. That's gallows humor. If that's the only kind of humor that you ever know, that can be really debilitating. So be aware of that, be careful. All right. These next 2 slides are the things that are going to help you to manage that stress. Really big things. Practice self-awareness. If you got good emotional intelligence, you'll practice self-awareness. Really healthy exercise, or healthy habits. Eating right, exercising, yoga, breathing techniques, meditation, whatever it takes to help clear your mind. Okay, I gotta relax. I'm gonna allow myself time to unwind. I'm gonna allow myself the time to let all that negativity go and be out and refresh myself. Diet, healthy foods, plenty of water. I've got water here, but our healthy foods over here are donuts, and we could thank our Marine Corps guy for that, and which is good because I'm a police officer from the late 70s, early 80s. I still eat donuts, so it's okay. The guys don't now bagels. Bagels. Yeah, they're so much better for you. All right, so practice self-management skills. It's okay to say no. This is probably the biggest thing that many people have challenges with is they don't understand the word no and what it means. Someone asks them to do something, and because they're a really nice guy, you go, yeah, I can do that. Or I'll give it my best shot. I remember before I had a calendar in a phone, I had a Palm Pilot, and then I had a BlackBerry and all kinds of stuff because I kept saying yes to so many things that I was saying yes to multiple things. I never could say no. And it used to piss my wife off because and I look back at it and go, would have pissed me off too. Because I never could say no. So I was always gone. You know, someone needed something to do. I got involved in the Special Olympics because of that, the law enforcement torch run, which actually ended up being one of the greatest things I ever did. I was involved for 10 years. I actually served as the president of the board of directors for the Special Olympics Idaho, and I was the president of the law enforcement torch run. Very rewarding, very good. But initially it was like, God, you're taking on too much, Mom. You know, or that's what my wife would tell me. So, you got to have the ability to say no when you do that. Build a healthy support system. Journaling. If I could have journaled, I could have written 5 or 6 books, and they all would have been bestsellers because people love to know what cops were like and what they did. But you know what? Right now, I don't remember hardly any of the details. I remember the big things, the things that were impactful. All right, just like that suicide. That was 20. Let's see. Now it's. I've been retired for 13 years. 33, so it's been about 39 years or so. And I still remember what the blood looked like and smelled like and what she looked like and what the kids, and it's like, that's impactful. But I've gotten by that being debilitating. All right. Journaling is the way to deal with things. For debrief with a trusted colleague, friend, or a member, this support system and the debriefing, really important. Find somebody that you can talk to that understands or will understand how you feel, so that you don't have to deal with this by yourself. Because when you deal with it by yourself, if you don't know the problem, you can't solve your problem. And even if you know the problem and you're trying to solve the problem, you're probably not smart enough to solve the problem. Okay, and that I think is important. I was the best user of the employee assistance program that the Boise Police Department ever had, because I recognized that early on in my career that if I didn't take care of myself, I was going to be in deep trouble. We have an addictive personality in our family, so I know that. I recognize that. My wife recognized that. My wife should have divorced me a half a dozen times. She didn't, and thank God for that. We've now been married for 45 years, and been together for 48. So truly, she's my best friend and she's my best confidant. She's the person who I would pick to debrief something with, because she would at least listen to me and sometimes give me those impeccable words of wisdom that a wife can always come up with. All right, the last slide. Leave work at work. Okay, it's okay to leave work at work.
But with our devices that we have these days, we can keep track of everything all the time, whenever we want. And that's a blessing and a curse. So if you can't leave work at work, please do your best to balance. And you're with your family, and where you are, be where you are. Don't let your mind be somewhere else while you're with your family, because that will continue that burnout problem, and it just recurs. End of the day, live on a positive note, and then along with that same thing, you're sharing how you success and use value small victories. I look at it this way: you are approached by a really huge project, something that's come up, and you know I've got to be project manager at St. Luke's Hospital for an elective. brand new development and saying it cost a 10-year project. When you look at that, you go, holy shit, that is huge. Okay, that is gonna be lots of work, lots of problems, lots of good, lots of bad, and you know that how you develop it, and you're one bite at a time. So you take this little tiny town, and pretty soon, you're got your own little down to a small enough place where you can, tackle it with that. But measuring each day with that success, whether that be, hey, I got 3 phone calls made today. I got, and as a police officer, this is what we would do. I measured success this way. I wrote a couple of tickets, okay, but I ran into 3 people that were in distress, and I was able to provide some assistance to them.